Hello tool groupies, maintenance men, mechanics nationwide. Welcome to the Backwoods Mechanic channel. If you like tool reviews, do-it-yourself how-to videos, pop a clutch on that subscribe button and enjoy this video. Today we're going to be talking about an industrial washing machine and basically about the brakes and about the bushing that goes to the brakes. If anybody has ever worked on an industrial washing machine such as a Milnor, then you've already been down this road. But if you're somebody who hasn't and you're trying to fix your own machines, maybe this video will help you. Now if we turn this around, you will see what we are looking at is a big long shaft right here. There's a shaft that runs all the way across from both sides. It's because on this side of the washer, you've got a pulley that is behind this box right here that helps go to the tub, that helps turn the tub. Behind that pulley is an even bigger pulley. Runs belts all the way up to the top here, hooks to the transmission of everything, and there you go. On this side, this is what's referred to as the clean side. There's only one pulley and it runs up to the tub. So this is the main side, the dirty side, and it pulls all the way across that shaft, so it turns the tub on both ends of it. It's got bearings on both ends. One's the clean side bearing, the dirty side bearing, and then right here in the middle is an essential part of the washer, which is the brakes, the brake caliper, the rotor. Now this is essential because when you got a washing machine this big, whenever it extracts, it's going 100 miles per hour or faster in one big giant circle. Therefore, if anything breaks on it, if a bolt breaks, if it becomes uneven, it could become dangerous. So you want to make sure that your machine is running properly when it comes to the brakes. Now this is essentially the brake caliper that's going to sit right smack dab in the middle of the shaft here. As we look at it, you can see it's got several different bleeder fittings. It's got one on the top, one right here on the side, and it's also got one on this side over here. And right here is the bushing. It's got flanges, it's got the big brass bushing right here, it's got grease fittings that need to stay greased, and then it hooks on the flange. They've got these two bolts right here, these two bolts right here that run into it, that hooks to the brake caliper. The brake caliper comes up into what is a guide. This helps hold it in place where it's supposed to be at. These guide arms right here keep that bushing from sliding back and forth, and it keeps it in line where it needs to be at around the rotor. Now the rotor on this particular machine has seen better days and it will need to be replaced sometime in the future, just like any other rotor. It does have grooves in it. It's got a deep groove up here and then it kind of ribs out to the outside, and then you can feel how much it's been worn down over a long period of time. So at some point in time in the future, that will definitely have to be replaced, and that'll be a whole separate video. But in most cases, this is involving the brakes. You're going to be changing the brakes, make sure they're changed periodically and properly. Now you can check them out by coming down here below this, and you can see where the brakes sit here at. Now most of the time, you can tell if they're too close or not, and you can order some new brakes. Whenever you get new brakes, they will come with spacers in between so you can line it up properly. You want to make sure that your brake caliper is functioning properly, just like any other side, because one side of the piston could stick and the other side could be working, and that would make uneven wear on your caliper. Now, in order to get to these, basically what you need to do, you can go ahead and unhook these brake lines that runs right up here to where your master cylinder is, and then you take these two bolts off of the bottom here, take the two bolts off the top, and it will hang here because of this guide pin. It will hold it in place. You'll probably need help, or you'll need to sit down inside of the wash pit right here so that this will rest on your lap. You could put a piece of wood there or something like that so it will easily sit down. Now once it's swinging here, all you have to do is take this Carter key out, pull this pin out, and it will relieve the bottom half of your brakes, and then you go to the top, and all you got to do is take this Carter key out, knock this pin out, and it will release this entire caliper down into your lap right below you. As you can see, I'm sitting right here in the wash pit. I could easily lay it right here, put the brand new brakes in their place, put the pin back in place on the bottom, and then all you got to do is raise it up, put the pin back through the top, install your Carter keys, and then make sure to bleed the system. Now you can bleed the system a few different ways. You can have somebody turning the washer back and forth, and every time they get done turning the tub and release the button, it will put pressure on this, and you can open them up to let them bleed out. It's kind of like pumping the brakes on a vehicle, or you can get yourself a brake bleeder kit and you can do the job that way. These brake calipers are serviceable, so if you do have problems with the pistons, you can order a new piston for it, which also comes with the new assembly that you need, the seals and everything that you need to put back in it, and you can rebuild these calipers. You got to make sure these lines here are in place the way they're supposed to be. Those are copper lines, and you can customize them and bend them and replace those on your own if need be. Now this whole thing works on a simple function. This guide up here keeps it in place, and then you've got your brake cylinder and your master cylinder right here. All you got to do is hook all this stuff up and it should work. It will keep it in place around the rotor, and it's hooked to this bushing so that it can go left or right and it can move freely while the machine is actually washing. But if someone has failed to maintain grease inside of these bushings right here, it will create a problem. They will become loose and they will wobble back and forth. They'll move back and forth a little bit, and whenever it's going into extract, this thing will be sitting here and jarring back and forth. Again, this thing goes 100 miles an hour whenever it is spinning. And whenever it is spinning and it's cocking sideways any little bit at a time, it will create sparks. And it could potentially do some serious damage or create serious injuries if it was to get stuck. This particular machine I have seen problems with before. I had a call, I went to go fix a machine one time, and simply because they did not maintain their brakes properly, it broke something off, and it actually took the brake caliper, it broke this pin up top here, and it slung the caliper all the way around into the bottom half of the tub, and it got wedged between the tub and the shaft bearing, which ended up having to go in, take those sides with the belts on them off, relieve all the pressure just to relieve the pressure from the shaft. That way it could relieve the pressure from this thing being wedged between the actual tub and the shaft itself. So these things are very important that you keep them greased properly and that they don't have a lot of slack in them. If they got a lot of slack in them, it's time to replace them. It is a two-piece bearing. It comes in two different pieces. And in order to replace them, what you essentially need to do is you got to take this brake caliper out of the way. You knock those pins loose, you take these bolts out, you pull the entire caliper out of the way. Once the caliper's out of the way, this will spin freely. As you can see on this machine here that is sitting opposite from the other one, which is what I'm going to be working on here today. This spins all the way around the entire shaft. Everything mounts here, your rotor is right here. We ever have to take this off, subscribe and you'll see how to do that. Now this part, just for educational purposes, as you see it sits one way. You got the upper and lower mounts right here that the bolts go into. You have got these bolts that run across, that run into the flanges, and it holds this bearing or this bushing in place. So once the caliper is disassembled, as you can tell, I have replaced this one recently. We will come around here. This is the lock washer, basically, that goes all the way around this, and it's got these little lips that stick out and fold over top of the flat sides of the hex all the way around. What that does, it locks that nut in place, keeps it from coming loose over time, and it also has it on the other side over there. The first thing you're going to want to do is take a flat screwdriver or chisel, unlock those. Then you're going to want to start taking all of these apart all the way around the whole machine. You spin it around, you take them apart a little at a time until they are all completely pulled out of the way. Now once those are all pulled completely out of the way, the flange itself on each side is what's going to be holding this bearing in place. And if you spin the flanges around, you'll see that they have an opening right here. All you got to do is do the same thing. You take the nut and the bolt out, and there is a spacer right here. It's basically like a little piece of pipe that stays in between the flange that keeps this from being over tightened any at all. You take that out, take the bolts out, and then these flanges will come right off here and go around the shaft. This one will do the same. Make sure that you put it on the same way that you took it off, and that you make sure everything is lined up accurately, that the bolts are all going the same direction. If the bolts are not going the same direction here, like this one has the nut on the inside, whenever you put the caliper back on, it will be stopped by those nuts. So you make sure that everything is put back in the way that you disassembled it, or you'll have to take it apart and do it again. But whenever you pull this off here and you get ready to loosen these up and actually take these flanges off here, you will need somebody here to help you, or these will hit the ground. It is a two-piece bushing. And whenever you take the flanges off and you pull them off to the side, it will fall down into the pit. Now you might not want them to land on your head if you're underneath this. You might want somebody to help put it back in there. Either way, when you do put this back together, it will take two people to hold, the actual bushing in place while you slide the flanges where they're supposed to be at, and you put all the bolts back together. Now this is basically what one half of that bushing looks like. They are solid brass. Here is where those bolts are going to go through at. They're going to lay right in there. And you're going to want to make sure that you have new ones in their place, preferably stainless steel, that they're the right length and that they're strong enough to hold it. But for an example, this is where those will go through at. And this is what the flanges look like brand new, as you can see right here. Now, depending on where you are, your best bet is to get a hold of the Milnor Corporation and ask them what your nearest parts distributor is, and then contact them to order the right parts for the job. But as you'll basically see here for this demonstration, the flange will go around it and the other half will go in right here, and then there's where your spacer will go in between that. You put that little piece of pipe in there, you put your bolt in place, lock everything down. Such as right here, I do have all the parts that I need to do this particular job with. I've got the flanges that I need for the inside and the outside. Looks like a horseshoe. And I did buy the proper bolts for the job. I went to my local Tractor Supply, Lowe's, Royal King. You can go to any of those places and find the actual bolts you need for this job. Now this is to show you how it essentially sets in place. As you can see here, this is the brand new bushing. It will basically sit inside there. Your shaft goes right through here. It's got little grooves inside of it so that whenever you put the grease through the grease fitting here, it will go in to the bushing where it needs to be at while it's turning around the shaft. And this one will also sit right overhead, and it will lock on the other side of the bushing. Now both of these, you will want them two ends right there to line up, because these bolts are going to go through these individual holes right here. They're going to run down through where your cutout is on the bushing and into the other hole so that you can tighten everything in place. And this is kind of like what those locks are going to look like whenever you put them in place and they line up on the holes right there. Your bolts are run through them. You take these little corners here and you fold them over top of the hex on your fastener, and it will kind of keep them locked in place so they will not unthread over time. And another thing to consider is certain washing machines do come with these oil seals, and these are essentially made to where they can help keep everything sealed inside. But in order to get these on there most of the time, you have to slide it over the whole shaft, which entails a whole lot of work. So a lot of people might not use those, but they do make these in different varieties so that you can buy them where they are divided. They're already cut in half, and then all you got to do is take them and slide them over the shaft as is. Now you have to check with your specific manufacturer to see if they come with these, and they are basically there to specifically go around the shaft, keep it nice and tight, keep all your grease or your oil in place depending on what it is that you use. Now the people that I use for brakes on these washers are Wheelwood. They do have the brakes that you need for the Milnor washers. Now when you put it all in, you basically reassemble it how you disassembled it. You put the flange and everything in place, you put this bushing back in place, and then you hook your brake caliper right back up to the bushing. As you can see here with this caliper right here, the flange, they run through the flange into the brake caliper. You tighten them up, you put your guide pins back, you put your brakes back in here, and then you're good to go. But then you'll have to bleed the actual system, which you can do with a self-bleeding tool or with assistance, like I mentioned in the beginning of the video. Now, as you can see with this one, I need a rebuild kit for it because the piston is pushed out here and it is leaking. This is busted, so this will need to be replaced. And all I got to do that is take the top half of this off and then push it out. Put the new one in, pull it all back in, put brake fluid in it, put it on the washing machine. Now, hopefully this video has helped somebody out there. If you're going to be a maintenance man, you're going to work on your own laundry machines in your own factory, and you need any questions, feel free to ask them in the comment box below. Otherwise, pop the clutch on that subscribe button. Let me know what you think. If you're somebody who works in this field, what do you do? Do you work on these own machines? What problems have you run across? But otherwise, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.